hunting and fishing in New England, something that I've always grown up knowing was important to the culture up here, and it's exciting to see new people kind of enter the media industry in various ways, and I'm excited to be joined by a first-time guest on the show. This is the New England Take. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead, the NewEnglandTake.com to get more from the show. Like and subscribe if you're checking this out on YouTube, New England Take, if you do a search for that. As always, all the social medias, you know what to do on those. All right. Excited to be joined by Matt Capaldo of Hunt Fish New England. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, AJ. It's good to see you again. Last we saw each other was at the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo, and it's good to see you again, man. How are things?
Yeah, things are great, and I was excited to see a couple of young guys start up a show on this topic. I mean, the big thing for me is I grew up with knowing about the Outdoor Channel and ESPN on Sundays doing their terrible old, very large old men wandering around with their boats and guns and such and doing things. But the digital landscape of outdoors content is really, I feel it's really blown up like over the last 5 years, maybe going back 10 years or so, with like Under Armour and Red Bull, all these different large corporations funding so many aspects of the digital sports media landscape. Have you kind of have the same opinion on that?
Totally, and that's kind of how I got into hunting, was the exposure through social media. I think just like social media and like Instagram and YouTube, especially, people had instant access to a lot of these. I think a lot of famous individuals who ended up taking up hunting or fishing, and then it exposed people to that, sparked their interest, and I think it really did blow up exactly within that time frame you described.
The big thing that stands out to me is Cameron
Cameron Haynes.
Yeah, Cameron Haynes. That's his name. Through Joe
Yep,
Rogan
actually
Experience.
wearing his shirt right here. Yeah.
Origin, love it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. He's hilarious. He's great whenever he's on the Joe Rogan Experience, which is where I heard of him, and checking him out on some of his videos that he posted and following his bananas social media feed, doing his running that just scares the crap out of me as his legs fall apart in front of him.
Yeah. Lift, run, shoot. That's his motto, and it clearly works for him.
It does, at least until his body falls apart under him, but he's going to ride it straight till then, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of those guys that you mentioned, like Rogan and Haynes, and I think the show Meat Eater was a huge impact to really promoting hunting and fishing nationally. But there is a pretty big hunting fishing community here in New England, which we saw a microcosm of that at the New Hampshire Outdoor Expo. And it was several years before that you and I met, that we actually started Hunt Fish New England as more of like a passion project, getting involved with hunting and fishing here in the region. You had mentioned a lot of the shows that were on like ESPN or like Nesson back in the day. You could only really get them in the mornings, and they rarely showed New England stuff. It was a lot of Midwest, sometimes just things maybe like south of the border or north of the border. But it was very rare that you would see something in New England, even on like Nesson. They didn't always have, outside of Charlie Moore, there wasn't always somebody who was doing hunting and fishing in New England. And we're not trying to fill that void per se, but we just realized, like, come on, there's a huge industry here in the hunting and fishing world. We're in one of the best places in the country to engage in both of those sports, or forms of recreation, however you want to look at it. Let's see if we can try to expose a little bit more and showcase what's going on out here. And then we realized maybe there's a different layer to this. There's a whole industry, not in just the people doing the fishing, the hunting, but also the people who supply the products. And I think within that same 5 years, this kind of reshoring of American goods and this focus on American goods has really gotten to the limelight. And that's what we're focusing on now specifically. Hunt Fish New England, we're not trying to say we're the best hunters or the best fishermen out there, because we're not. I mean, there's so many people who are very successful in both of those things, way beyond where we're at right now. But what we did realize is that our biggest passion was for the small businesses, the American businesses here in New England that we do think don't get the spotlight they deserve. So that's our mission, to just promote and showcase New England-made products and services in the hunting and fishing industry, with the hope that as we continue to do this and continue to work with different, whether it's a company or some nonprofits, that we can help get some sales, help promote a lot of these companies here in New England, and support American made. And just that people will think before they buy something for a hunting trip or a fishing trip. Like, how can I not buy something from a big box store that's made outside the States? How can I maybe purchase something to use that's made here in the region that I'm actually going to go utilize it in? Supporting our neighbors and supporting our community in so many different ways.
Not to harp on Joe Rogan again for another little aspect of this, but I think he summed it up well. Where basically hunters are very close to teenage girls when it comes to clothes shopping, when it comes to the gear they have and all the
I never heard
accessories.
him say that, but that's
Yeah,
pretty true.
he did. He said that a long time ago. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God, yeah, it's totally that. 'Cause you got to get all the stuff that matches, and you got to get all the guns and such. Like, there's a bit of gear envy. Like, as a camera nut, like I see that definitely in the hunting and fishing industry. I've had the chance through my day job to go to a bunch of different expos the last few months since I started over there, and it's fascinating to see like these people you wouldn't expect to like be creating gear of different kinds, like whether it's bags, whether it's not like guns and gun accessories or fishing rods. Like, no, it's like fishing lures and different bait sort of things on the fishing side of it. Special bags that are made from recycled materials I'm seeing quite a bit off, and then ways to try these very hippie kind of ways of thinking about it, that these very hardline conservative style dudes are creating their own businesses with, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah, and I think there are like a lot of misconceptions about the hunting community specifically. I think a lot of people kind of see hunters as like far right, Elmer Fudd, don't take my guns. I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna hunt where I want. But it's the complete opposite of that. Hunters, in my opinion, are whether you want to say conservationists or environmentalists. I think hunters are the most environmentally aware and conscious and supportive through conservation. Um, and there, in doing that, a lot of the products being made, there is an environmental focus on it, right? Um, there are some companies that will only buy material from the United States, right? Less of a carbon footprint. There's some companies who will only make their own components of their goods that then get manufactured and then distributed. So yeah, very, very interesting that people are creating things from, like you mentioned, the smallest components to the biggest components that go into, a hunting and fishing trip or just a day out there. And that doesn't even include like the services specifically, like
Yeah.
guide services. That is actually some people's complete, lifestyle.
Yeah, we'll dive into guiding, which is big. I mean, it's huge to the tourism industry and such in all the states up here in New England. But continuing with the gear a little bit longer. I mean, what are some businesses that maybe are relatively new that have really stood out to you, especially going to the Outdoor Expo and various other companies you've spoken to?
Um, there's so many. I mean, right now, turkey season is about to get started in New England, so I guess we can talk about some like companies related to that season. Um, there is a very big company. So I flashed my shirt earlier, Origin. Origin is a company based out of Maine. You've probably heard of like Jocko Willink, if Jocko is involved with Origin. And what Origin does is they focus. They make a lot of like jujitsu materials. They do make everyday durable goods, but they also have a very stellar and unique camo line. So in addition to picking up this Cameron Hanes shirt from Origin, um, I decided that I would be a hypocrite if I was wearing something made overseas trying to kill a turkey here in New England. So this would just be an example of a base layer that I bought from Origin. So um, Origin camo is great. A lot of it's wool based, keeps you warm in the spring. I bought this one specifically because in turkey hunting, turkeys have incredible vision. This hood also comes with the pre installed face covering too. So I can't remember the exact name for that piece, but yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to using this spring. Actually, and just next week, turkey season opens here in Mass. And there's another company out of New England, sorry, out of Maine, Nor'easter Game Calls. This is a 3 pack of turkey calls that I picked up. Really looking forward to these. I was practicing. They just came in the mail for me today. I was just practicing before we went live. So those are just a couple things that I'm just really looking forward to using. Um, at the expo, we talked to another AJ Hunter. He owns Hunt Light, and he was one of the guys who's making bags. He's really focused on efficiency and organization. So I'm also looking forward to get one of his bags so I can, or one of his packs specifically to carry these goods in. So these are just the companies that stand out to me immediately, but there are just so many others. What I really liked at the expo that we were at was so Dan Kenny is the individual who organizes a lot of these expos here in Mass, and he had guys from all over New England with different like soft plastic baits for bass fishing. Because right after turkey season, the bass are turned on now, but bass fishing is really big here in New England. So we had companies like Fresh Baits. They're out of Worcester, Mass. They have some very unique patterns. Crazy Hick Bait Company out of New Hampshire. I was pro staff with them when I was doing more tournament angling. They just have incredible stuff, and it's all geared to New England. That's the best part. You can buy stuff out of the big box store, but it might be geared to like fishing like the Okeechobee or somewhere out in the Midwest. A lot of these lures that you're getting locally, they're intended to be used locally, and they're also effective elsewhere. There's also Bend It Fishing. He really focuses on lake trout fishing, specifically ice fishing, and he was using a particular lure. It wasn't very effective. It was made, I think, somewhere in Canada, and then he realized it just was too big for the fish here. He made his own version, downsized, and it was highly effective. So those are just some things that come to mind. I think focusing on American products, focusing on things that are unique and effective here in New England, those are really those things that we're looking to support and also utilize in the field.
Yeah, I mean, both with your podcast and me doing the New England take. I mean, the internet basically makes this so much easier to accomplish nowadays. Like,
Hmm.
anyone can set up a website in an hour, have it be live, set up a storefront, and then begin to figure out getting your product out there. It's fantastic. I mean, the whole we talk about Cameron Hanks and Jocko Willink and all that. I mean, they blew up because of the internet. It existed. They're able to promote their businesses through podcasts and video and partnerships with different organizations that you just can't do when there's only, like we talked about, only a couple different cable sports channels and such that maybe they can do, and SN and such. It feels like the perfect time is coming out of COVID for these businesses to really start investing in getting out there and doing shows. Like, shows don't really cost that much in the scheme of things if you find the right ones, and it's so important to support local businesses in your region. And like you said a minute ago, it's the bait probably over in Alaska ain't gonna work necessarily here in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, or Maine, or whatever. It's like you have different
Right.
species of different creatures out here, and what they're gonna see for terrain with the pine and granite here in New Hampshire is gonna be very different from what they see out in California.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about guides. Never really thought about it as someone who grew up in rural Maine already. Like, it never clicked with me. It's like you usually just go see one of your buddies. I'm sure they know where to go to get whatever it is you want to get.
Right.
But for people that want to maybe didn't grow up in this sort of atmosphere, it's a fantastic way to kind of explore a new area and maybe get into this very this sports, these different sports that people maybe are beginning to consider a lot more again, especially when we talk about people are sick of being at home all the time. They want to get out there. They want to see some damn sun, and they want to take in the world around them in ways that maybe they didn't consider.
Yeah. I'm like what you would consider like an adult onset hunter, right? So guides are extremely important for someone like me who doesn't have too much mentorship or support in terms of like having somebody go out into the field with me and teach me this, teach me that, and help me become effective. It's kind of a lot of trial and error and a lot of upfront research and then trial and error. So I got my first glimpse into how important like a lodge or a guide is, actually from a trip that is going on its 21st year. So for about 20 years, I've been going to Bear Springs up in Rome, Maine. It's Bear Springs Camps. It's a fourth generation family owned fishing lodge, where they have an amazing base cabin, but then they have different cabins all along this beautiful cove up in Maine. And just meeting the guys there, who we call them like the cabin boys. That's how they refer to them. But they're, these are grown men who have a lot of experience, angling up there and being safe on the water. And they're up there, they're fueling our boats, they're bringing us firewood, they're bailing our boats on certain days. They're helping us when we're just fumbling all around the dock. And talking to these guys, this is one guy particularly up there, Jeff. Talking with Jeff, it's like, Jeff, what's biting? And he knows right away. He's like, this is what's biting. This is what you should do on this wind. This is where you should go. And I'm just like, wow, this guy knows this place like the back of his hand. And every time he tells us something, if we ourselves can execute correctly, it's a great time. And we actually are able to, catch that smallmouth or catch that pike at this time of day in this condition. And then, so that just made me like love these multi-generation companies, but also like respect the input of people who are experts in that area, like Jeff for that example. So now that I'm doing more hunting, they're just talking with these guides. It's just like they are all in. And it's for a lot of these guys, it's not even their full-time job. They make a full-time job of it during certain seasons, but some of these guys are pipe fitters, welders, architects, engineers, you name it. And they're doing this because it's a passion, but it also is ingrained in the culture where they live. I just think of like Maine guides, for example. Like the Maine guide is just like ingrained in the culture. So I can think of a few guides in particular. And I was talking about the learning curve for going after a particular game. There is Devin. The first person that comes to mind is Devin Cooley. He's with Backwoods Gun Dogs. He's up in the Moosehead area, and we were going after bear, and we were like, we have minimal opportunity for bear and mass. You can't bait for bear and mass. And bears are just so intelligent and elusive and aware of their surroundings that without bait, it makes it very challenging, especially in these kind of more thick hardwood areas. You don't have a lot of sight to, spot and stalk them. So we looked into it and we noticed that in Maine, there's a big culture of bear hunting, especially with hound hunting. And just seeing that in itself and seeing the hounds work with Devin, and he just had it dialed in. And, we're going all over Maine in the Moosehead area. He's getting us on bears consistently. We're talking with him. We get to know his family. He not only is guiding you, but there's also lodging included. It's just, you get a full taste, in my opinion, of the culture of the area. And the guides are they want to see you be successful, and they're very passionate about the sport. So those are just a few examples that come to my mind. Clearly, I'm like preoccupied with Maine. It's like my home away from home. But it's the guides. They just will give you that leg up in these new areas of hunting that you might not be familiar with. But also, if you just want to be effective and work with a professional and just get the full experience, the guides are there to make that happen. And again, that's American jobs too.
Yeah. It's also a way just to be safe. Like if you're not familiar with an area, it's a very dangerous thing to just go wandering out into the woods, and you don't know how many other people necessarily are hunting out there, or how many other, what sort of the bears are you might encounter. Speaking specifically with bears, or if you're out there hunting deer, like, who's out there hunting this deer? Because guess what? There's also bears once again out there that might want to go find a deer for themselves. You don't know if you're going to come across water. Like, you can look at all the maps you want, but at different times of year, there's different changes to how that territory is going to look.
Yeah, and there's time that goes into it too. I just use myself as an example. I'm here in like smack dab in Central Mass, and I don't have time to go up to Moosehead and get a bait station and bait it. Well, get the bait is a whole other story. But, to fill the bait sites and all that, I don't have the time. So the guides, they just make sure you're effective and, to your point, making it safe and for everybody with hopefully for a successful harvest.
For me, I'm not a hunter. I did some fishing when I was younger, and I don't have any patience. I picked up photography because it's easier. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna walk around and take pictures because that's a little more engaging for my ADHD rattled brain.
Sure.
But it, something I think that's very important also that is the community you build with these sorts of things. Like at the outdoor expo once again, like just to harp on it, but I mean these guys went on a hunt or two together, and they act like they've been lifelong friends. They know everything about each other. It's like that culture is so important to society generally speaking, and then to have
Hmm.
that these people in your life that you have this common interest, you have an activity you can go out and do together, and have that friendship building that you can't get any way unless you're out in nature. Like I feel like it's a different thing. Like even as someone who doesn't hunt or fish, but just to go out camping and spend that time with family and doing that sort of thing is huge. To get away from the internet, to get away from the screens,
Yes.
and get into see just calm and quiet and the experience of outside.
Yeah, there is some people who maybe don't fish or hunt might not understand, and this might sound kind of hippy dippy in itself, but I think there is like a spiritual component to being outdoors, and especially hunting and fishing. And how somebody might question, how is ending an animal's life, a spiritual thing, or how is there anything good that comes out of that? It's kind of something you don't know until you actually do it. And there is like the added health benefits and mental wellness component that you were mentioning, but I think there is a spiritual side of it too, and that's something that I've been kind of more realizing in the past couple of years in doing both hunting and fishing all around the region.
You took my kid fishing, and he caught a fish, and you think I'd given him $1 million. Like that
Yeah.
experience for getting out there with your children, how letting them experience this, even if it's not something you prefer to do personally. There's a lot of people who
Right.
don't like camping or something, but get your kids out there and do these sorts of things. Like
Mhm.
fishing is kind of a low entry bar that you can try doing it. And if they really dig it, like finding a guide and maybe take that weekend with your kid if he or she's a little older and maybe can handle the experience a little more. It's just think of what that would mean for your family.
Absolutely. And you were mentioning community just a second ago. This is probably the most like welcoming and supportive community I've ever been a part of. I work in healthcare. I've played sports my whole life, several various sports. Um, I've worked in academia. Out of all of those, just as an example, I think this hunting and fishing outdoor industry is like the most welcoming community and respectful community that I've personally been involved with. Nothing against my coworkers, nothing like that, but this is just there's a lot of mutual respect, a shared mission and vision and goal, and people just want to see each other do well. Are there maybe a couple bad eggs? Maybe, but I haven't come across any yet in just my short experience in the industry. But there is like organizations that there's an organization, it's a nonprofit, they're called Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and there's a specific BHA group here in New England. And I just met with their coordinator, Chris Borgatti. That was the last podcast we just released. And talk about somebody who's in it for their community. Chris is somebody who might be the only person at a public hearing where their majority of the people present are trying to eliminate hunting or fishing, whether it's access or actually the activity in itself. And Chris is there advocating for this, make and trying to promote these opportunities and maintain these opportunities. So from more of like a grassroots level, there is a lot of work too within the community to maintain these opportunities to hunt and fish. And BHA is just one example of someone who's part of the community, but they're advocating on behalf of hunting and fishing as a heritage and a sport. Um, Now to keep chiming in about BHA, BHA has an additional component, and it's called the Armed Forces Initiative. So think about our community at large and think about the servicemen and women coming back from deployment, maybe retiring from service. And the Armed Forces Initiative of BHA is there to support those individuals by using hunting and conservation as its vehicle. So I just had a chance to meet um, with the AFI liaison. His name's Cody. I'd butcher his last name, and I don't have it written in front of me, so I'll just keep it at Cody. Um, Cody was describing AFI's mission and how it supports our community, specifically our service members and veterans. So the mission of AFI is to give a new mission to individuals coming back to our soil in form of conservation and hunting. So part of it is promoting the sport and act of hunting as a new mission, but also the conservation piece, because as Cody explained it to me, the military pays their service members to do particular jobs, and the government pays a lot to train and invest in our service members for particular skills, and those skills can continue to be utilized after deployment and service for different conservation work. So he was explaining, like, if there is maybe like a dam that needs to be assessed and maybe repaired, who better than tenant service members who are compassionate and passionate about conservation, but also have the skills to create a plan, to do some engineering, to do that 7-mile hike or that 10-mile kayak row, to then go there and complete that mission and preserve that opportunity, to conserve that opportunity for everyone else to enjoy, but also they're there using their skills on this new mission. And so it just goes so far beyond just like the immediate community. It really sinks, I think, into the entire community in terms of the hunting and fishing industry and the community within, both hunting and fishing.
All right, we're in the last 2 minutes here of the show.
Sure.
So give the plug here. What is Hunt Fish New England? Where can people check it out, and what can they expect in the future from you?
All right, so again, Hunt Fish New England, we're here to promote and showcase New England-based products and services within the hunting and fishing industry. We are mostly on Instagram, and we also have a podcast which releases weekly. Our handle for Instagram is hunt_fish_New England. And if you just go in the search bar for any podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, just type in Hunt Fish New England. We're right there. White background, black logo. It's pretty clear. It's like a silhouette of New England with an arrow going through one way and a fly rod going through the other. And we're just going to keep getting these small businesses on our podcast. And it's just really fun to get to know the people behind the products and to support the American products and New England products as much as we possibly can.
Matt Capaldo of Hunt Fish New England, thank you so much for joining me. This is a great conversation.
Thanks, AJ. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely subscribe to them. I also link to their Instagram feed and their podcast feed at thenewenglandtake.com, as well as in the description if you're checking this out, and my podcast feed or YouTube feed. Speaking of, please be sure to subscribe and like if you're not already over on YouTube, as well as subscribing on all the major podcast platforms. I'm once again releasing on the podcast platforms. I got lazy about it, trying to figure out the YouTube thing, but I think I can go back to it. I think I got the time. So be sure to subscribe to the New England Take over on Facebook, on Apple, Google, Spotify, all the different podcast platforms. This has been the New England Take. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. Be sure to check out thenewenglandtake.com. If you got a tip, you want to join the show, you want to contribute, I'm looking for contributors, be sure to email thenewenglandtake@gmail.com.